Growing fallout in Flint, Michigan, after the governor apologizes for the city's poisoned water supply. Critics say state officials knew Flint's water was contaminated with dangerous levels of lead months ago, but did not tell the public. And now newly released emails reveal more about who knew what and when. Trace Gallagher is live in our West Coast newsroom with this story. Trace?
Megan, for more than a year and a half, residents of Flint, Michigan complained the water had a foul odor, tasted funky, and was causing side effects like rash and hair loss. Federal, state, and local agencies all reportedly had evidence the water was bad, yet they kept saying it was not. That is until doctors finally started diagnosing kids with high levels of lead in their blood. The water has turned out to be so tainted and so corrosive, General Motors has stopped using it, fearing it'll corrode machinery at their engine plant. Now the local water is forcing national action. Watch.
Over the weekend, I declared a federal emergency in Flint to send more resources on top of the assistance that we've already put on the ground.
But Michigan Governor Rick Snyder says a state of emergency isn't enough. He wants the president to declare it a disaster, which would free up tens of millions of federal dollars. But it's the governor getting the brunt of the criticism. Even Hillary Clinton has accused him of ignoring the needs of an already disadvantaged community. Today, the governor released his emails regarding Flint, and they appear to show that his chief of staff informed him the water was, quote, less than savory, but no clear evidence of lead. The same chief of staff went on to blame state and county water authorities. The reason Flint made the switch from using the Detroit water system to using water from the Flint River was to save money. The city, by the way, is still demanding residents pay for the water that was making them sick. Listen.
It feels personal, and it makes us all, people who are in Flint and people who are tied to Flint, very, very angry.
Several lawsuits have now been filed on behalf of Flint residents. Megan.
Unbelievable. Trace, thank you. This has now become a national political story, and you can see why. President Obama today visiting the city of Flint and suggesting this water crisis is just a symptom of a bigger problem.
Sometimes we downplay the role that an effective government has to play in protecting the public health and safety of people, and clearly the system here broke down.
Back with us now to discuss, Chris Direwalt and Dana Perino. Thanks both for coming back. Chris, Ron Fournier writes today, this town is a hard-bitten industrial town where it's full of people too proud to give up and too poor to matter. Is that why this happened?
Look, I grew up in a part of America that is not entirely different from Flint, Michigan. And I can say that Ron's right, both about Flint and a lot of places in the Rust Belt in the United States. Part of the problem is the insane lying that politicians of both parties have done to people in these communities for generations to say somehow it's coming back, or it's going to get better, or just hang on. I have a plan to make it better, because nobody wants to tell the truth, which is it ain't going to work. And you have these failed cities, you have these failed communities where people keep hanging on to hope for the next good thing, and then you see this and you realize it's only getting worse.
Dana, who is to blame here?
Well, first, I think Ron Fournier, who wrote a great piece, and he's from Michigan, he's from the area, he knows the politicians very well. He writes about how there's a systematic failure over and over again at the local, state, and possibly the federal level. I think the most important thing is the governor has said, all right, I will take responsibility, let's try to fix this right now. I don't think it should that the White House should waste another moment deciding whether this is a disaster or not. Basically, that distinction allows for more resources to flow to Flint immediately, and I would hope that taxpayers all across the nation would say, okay, this is where we can all come together and help them and do the right thing.
Right, but now the city manager apparently knew. I mean, it's not, the thing that's so egregious about this, correct me if I'm wrong, is they had knowledge. They knew, Chris, that there was something wrong with the water. And they let the people who were too proud to give up, but too poor to matter, continue drinking it, including children.
Well, look, I will say that an individual, people have no choice, right? If you're poor and you have no place to go and you don't have resources to move, but if you were pouring water into a cup for your child and it stunk and it smelled like sulfur and it was rotten, Would you give that to your child? No, you'd revolt. You'd march in the street. You know, we've had a lot of demonstrations of late in the United States. We've had a lot of demonstration movement about justice for this and don't do that and don't say this. The people of Flint should have been protesting in the streets. They should have been demanding that their leadership. And may I say this? Dana mentioned that maybe the EPA knew. Oh, the EPA knew. The EPA absolutely knew. The EPA said, well, it was a bureaucratic problem, blah, 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 blah. They knew. And they failed to do their job. They failed to act to protect people. And this is the same agency, dadgummit, that claims that it should have the power to regulate every facet of human life in this country, and it cannot keep sulfur out of the drinking water, out of the baby bottles of children in Flint, Michigan. Give me a break.
And now the lawyers have already circled, as of course they would. I mean, there's already been 5 state and 1 federal lawsuit filed against Flint in connection with this crisis, and more to come. And the question is, whether the EPA buried this, because there's a Virginia Tech researcher who did a water analysis in 2015. It helped expose this contamination, and they're saying at the federal level the EPA knew and they buried it. And the question is, what should happen as a result? I mean, who should get fired? Where is the accountability going to be besides the courtroom?
Well, remember also it was just 6 months ago that the EPA, the federal EPA, poisoned an entire river in Colorado, and I don't think anybody paid a price for that. I think that the first thing, I think that the president should be able to hopefully say to the city of Flint or to the governor somehow, these residents are not going to pay for the water.
No, they're not going to pay for the dirty water.
Okay, so that's not happening. So let's just like at least relieve them of that being on their mind. So that doesn't, we don't even have to have a legal dispute about that.
Talk about insult to injury. We have to stay on this.